Yeah, so Jason will do a NetTerrain outside plan review. So as Aiden mentioned, if you want to be more specific towards your environment, your requirements, feel free to schedule that one-on-one 15-minute meeting, and then we can go over your specifics. We can even help you create a small test pilot as well. So that's being said, I'll pass it off to Jason.
All right. Hi, guys. Thanks. So you should see my screen. I'm going to start in sort of my sandbox area today and talk about sort of the ground up, talking about fiber cables and strands and that sort of thing. So we have different link types. You can represent pretty much any link type you want in NetTerrain, but one of the link types would be a fiber cable with strands in it. I have some examples over here in my catalog on the right. So I have a 12 strand 144s and some others. This one is I think a single mode, might be multi. We'll look at it in a second. Um, but fiber cable, typically, if you're tracking fiber cable, you want to get down to strand level detail, which means you want to connect the cable, see the cable, and the strands inside and how they terminate. Oftentimes, based on conversations with customers and so on, and kind of what they're looking to document, can be anything from patch panel to patch panel. It might be splice cases because you're doing splicing out in the field. You need to track all your splicing and things like that. So I'm going to create a couple things, do some connections, kind of see how it works. Then I'll visit some other diagrams that we have sort of pre-built, but I'll just show you a little bit about how the tool is used, how it works, and what you can do as far as documenting. I'm not even going to start with a map or anything. I'm just going to start with some objects. Let's talk about a few different object types and how you can use those in the tool to help you document your network or infrastructure. I'm going to use patch panel and a splice case to start with, these two. So I'm just going to grab this guy here and put him here on the map. Not on the map, just on the diagram, right? So patch panel, Corning, pretty common, CCH04U. Double click on it, you drill down, you get some subcomponents where I can add cards to it. So if I want to track one card or all 12, I could do that. The card itself, the way we display it is front and back side with cross connects. So in this case, the back side, typically my strands are going to go there, and then the front side might patch down to something like a switch or a router. It might jumper over to another cabinet. But these are just examples, just kind of show feature functionality. CommScope splice case. It's got the ability to add multiple splice cards or trays. I can drag and drop a tray in, and the tray itself is going to act as a means of connecting or splicing, fusion splicing my strands together. So connect strands on one side, connect strands on the other, and basically you got your splice between them, your fusion splice. It's just the way we display things. So you're going to put strands. These are connection points for the strands, and then you can show the actual fact that they're connecting through together, right? So pretty easy to do. When you look at these two things, again, devices, we try and follow what manufacturer model and all that good stuff, parts. So you can find it in our catalog on the right-hand side. If things don't exist in the catalog, you can create objects yourself, or you can request it as a customer. You can request devices to be created by us, and we'd send them to you, and then you put them in your project. Very easy to do. So as far as cable, there's different ways of creating connections in NetTerrain. I'm just going to drag and drop this guy just because I can see both of these very easily. When you start to get into like a map and a lot of distance between objects, we have other tools for doing the connections, shortcuts, Control C, Control L, or there's what we call the simple link creator tool you can use as well. But here I've got a fiber cable now between these two guys. The fiber cable, if you look at it, just says 12 strand fiber cable. So pretty straightforward. What is it? It's 12 strand fiber cable. If I look on the left-hand side, I can actually open up this cable and actually see the strands. And this is what I use to create my connections, my strand connections. So if you do want to track a fiber cable, but also all the strands and the ports they connect to, you can certainly do that. Do you have to? No, that's totally up to you. But if you do want to eventually get into circuits, and I'll show you some circuit paths in a minute, um, getting down to port level is kind of critical to your defined circuits and circuit paths. What is this showing you? This is showing you the tube color, the strand color, information about whether or not this is going to be used as part of what we call the ACRA, which is a tool you can use to define paths or find paths at map level. This one we're going to click on in a second so we can actually edit the terminations. The rest is information. Is it an active strand, or is it a strand that's bad or unknown or reserved? Is it multi-mode or single mode? This one happened to be set up as multi, but you can do mixed. And then the name of the strand. If it's assigned to a circuit, it would show here. And then I've got a comments box that you can fill out. You can add additional columns of data very easily. So if you wanted to track more data about the strands, maybe the dB loss, or if you just want to link to other data sets, maybe you've got a SharePoint where you keep all your measurements and things like that for your fiber cables. You can link over to those things too. But if we want to connect the strands, if I want to start to actually terminate the strands, I can go and see strand one right there in the middle. And then you're looking at this from the standpoint of there's an end and an end, right? You've got your strands, and then what is it connected to on each side? So on the far right, there's my Corning. I'll go into the card, A card, connect it to the B port. Strand one on the other side, I can connect it up, click open this, and connect it to the 1-1 side, right? Now, strand two, you might be like, well, my B port's an LC, so it actually takes two strands, so I could double that up. But then, of course, the fusion splice side, we would just want to go to one, so we can do that. So I'll close that, and we can take a look at what I just did here, my handiwork. So if I double click on my Corning, go inside here, I can see my two strands connected to this termination point with LC. So I got two strands, an orange and a blue, and it tells me on the bottom left what the strand fiber name is, the cable, the actual name of the cable, and then the two strands, and then the color of the buffer tube that they're inside of. So if we look at the other side of the connection, all right, this is my splice. So I'm on the 1-1 side. So this side, I would want to connect most likely to another hop. And I could easily add that in if I wanted to. So for instance, if I come over here, I could take this patch panel, right? I'll rename this. You'll see we have data fields you can follow. I'll just call this patch panel one. And we'll call this maybe splice one. And we can take this guy, we'll do what's called a copy plus. Just a feature. It just allows you to recreate what you have, minus the connections, but it'll add the cards in for me. This is great for when you have large cabinets that are basically the same. You have 10 of them. You can recreate those very quickly. But if I look inside here, I've got my card. And if I want to add another fiber cable, maybe the 144, I can create my connections there. Right. And then this is my fiber cable. And then here I can go in and actually, again, same thing. Go to my splice tray. I want to go to the two side of the splice tray. And then the A card, I'll go to the B side. And then I can start to connect things. Again, strand two, I'll go to two, and then it goes to one in this case. I'll close this out. So now when I look at this side, I can double click and I can see the two strands here. If I want to jump over to what I'm connected to, I can double click, and there it takes me to the splice tray and it shows the connection. I can also double click and see the whole path that I created. So I'm going from this Corning to this Corning, and I'm going through the splice tray. So it shows me two strands for the LC. Those two strands go to two splices. So splice into the two connection points of the splice tray, cross connect over, and then back over to the port. Two strands back. So I've got a full path now, end to end, from here through the splice all the way to here, right? So pretty easy to do. Obviously, if you have a lot of connections to do, you're like, man, it's going to take forever. You can mass import data. We do have import through Excel. If you have other systems that you have data in, we can do an export and import. So there's all kinds of ways to get data into the system. You don't have to do things the way I'm doing it here manually. Now, if you wanted to place these things inside maybe a particular location with a map, We could look into doing that too. Let me just check and see if there's any questions here. Can you designate a location? Yeah. Where would you want that location on the splice closure? So let me show you this before I answer that. Before you ask me, before you respond to me. Sorry. So these guys here, typically you're going to put them in some sort of hierarchy, right? You don't want to just see them on a flat diagram. You want to see them like at a location. I want to see this inside a manhole. I want to see this inside a building, right? I'm doing this in reverse. Normally I start from the top level and I work down. I'm doing this in reverse today. I'm doing all my splicing and stuff, and then I'm going to kind of work my way up. So let me show you that. So I'm going to grab a manhole object, right? I'm just going to place that one here. Okay. Just bear with me for a second because, again, I'm kind of doing this in reverse. So I'll put this here, right? The manhole. And we'll call this manhole 1. And I'm going to grab a building object. All right. There's a building. I'll grab and drag and drop that one here. By the way, these icons and stuff we use, you can change those out. You don't like the icon, you can swap them up. You can have multiples. I actually have something called Building University over there on the right that I use a lot when I'm doing buildings and stuff. But let me just take this guy here, and I'm just going to copy this, Control C, Control V, and we'll call this building 2. Right. So as far as location, this manhole should have a location on a map. It should say, oh, this manhole is on this map, and this is where it lives, right? Now, these guys here, I want them actually inside their respective parents. So this guy here, I'm just going to Control X and throw it in the building, right? And then this guy here, I'm going to Control X and throw it in the manhole. Normally, again, I would do this in a different process. I would start with creating the buildings and the manholes and all that first. But again, this is backwards Thursday, I guess. So I'm doing it this way. So there's my patch panel, right? So now this is what I have: 2 buildings and a manhole. And to give this better perspective on where things are located, let's go ahead and insert the map, right? So we'll go to 814 West Diamond Ave. See if that pops up on my map here. No, it's not liking me for some reason. Let's try West Diamond. Oh boy. For some reason, my search isn't working today inside here. That's all right. We'll do it the old fashioned way. We'll just have to manually go find Gaithersburg here. I'll zoom in a bit. There's no way I'm going to find my location, probably. So we'll just zoom in a bit, and I'll just use this as a means. Put my map in. So, it's Costco. We'll use Costco there, and we'll put a building here, and we'll just put a manhole here. Normally, of course, you'd end up sizing these down, to the appropriate size. Now, the other thing you might do is you might have conduits, maybe duct banks and other things you're going to track, and that's fine. You can come over here and add the conduit. Again, a lot of this stuff you can import through Excel, but I can put my conduit in, and if my conduit has some sort of path that it needs to follow, right? If I want this to have bend points, maybe it follows the street, I can do that. I'll bring in another conduit here, put it here, and then do something like that, right? So now I've got conduit, I've got fiber. The fiber, I want to make sure it's associated with this conduit. So this is what we call bundling. And then I can have it follow that same path. So this fiber cable, I'm going to make it follow the same path as the conduit, but I am going to make it sure that the conduit is the parent of the fiber cable. So there you go. So now from the standpoint of location, I know exactly where this is, and I know what parent of this object, because I can see the full hierarchy tree at that point. Now, that doesn't keep you from adding additional data fields to objects on the left-hand side. So if I wanted to add some more information for that particular object type, I can certainly do that. It's not a problem. So hopefully that helps with sort of understanding where things are going to be located in the hierarchy and all that good stuff as far as using the software and creating, outside plant and all that. Now, you can certainly add more information, get into more levels of detail that you want with respect to the software. What I mean by that is, let me jump into a larger sort of example here, right? Where we have here I've got a big map of Maryland. You see a little bit of Pennsylvania and Delaware and so on, but all these, if you zoom in, you're going to see a bunch of endpoints, which are basically the different universities that I can drill into and go into cabinet level detail. Um, so I'm interconnecting all these universities together, uh, really through one primary campus, which is University of Maryland. But if I zoom in, all roads sort of lead back to here, and when we navigate in here, you see a bigger sort of outside plan example where now I've got, multiple buildings, multiple manholes, lots of conduit, because I may have four or more conduits between manholes, because that's pretty, could be pretty common in the environments that you work in. So you need to be able to reflect all those things. So I can look at a um, conduit and I can see, what's inside the conduit, called again the bundled links. So I can actually view through a report all the fiber cables that run through that particular segment of conduit. And you can do the reverse. You can look at a fiber cable and see the entire path that fiber cable traverses as far as all the conduit that it's associated with. So inside the manhole, just like the one I created, this one just happens to have two splice cans in it. Um, and it's got some other stuff in here too. There's a lot of some pictures that I've uploaded. I've got some basically duct bank sort of examples where I'm showing all the sort of the concrete duct banks for this manhole and how they traverse out. And I can see where the conduit is connected and where the fiber runs through inside this manhole, where it's coming out of in the manhole, right? So not just the conduit, but the duct bank too. And then we also have the fiber cables themselves and then the splice cases and all that. In addition to that, inside the buildings, if you want to get a little more detailed, I created a patch panel directly in the building, which is fine. You can certainly do that. But if you want to add more to the buildings, you certainly can. Like if I want to define the rooms or the floors of the building, I want to define a room or a data center in a building like I have here. Um, Again, level of detail, do you want to do rack elevations? Do you want to show equipment in the racks? Because from all of this, you can start to run reports, interconnection reports, device reports, and so on, things that show you information and data about in this case, the perspective of the cabinet, right? So I can see, again, a cabinet, I can see the cabinet hierarchy, I can see the equipment, the specific rack unit it's in, the PDUs. If you want to track PDUs and power, you can certainly show the PDU, or you can show the full PDU, can show the power supply that a particular port is connected to. And again, depends on what you want to track. Certainly, if your main primary interest is outside plant, I just want to determine fiber paths, strands, connections, endpoint connections. This level of detail you don't necessarily need. What you really need is probably just the fiber coming into the building and what it connects to and maybe where it terminates as far as the strands. So you can certainly do that. And then that allows you to generate those diagrams that show you the full path end to end of how things are connected. Once you get to that point, especially you're terminating your fiber cables and strands, you can take these views, these what we call the physical path or CLR, circuit layout record views, and turn these into defined circuits. And defined circuits means I'm going to name the circuit. I want the circuit so I can recall the circuit and understand exactly what path that circuit follows. So in this case, this is going from the data center building to the wind tunnel building at the university. And then it shows at the top what the path is. And then at the bottom, it shows the specific details of the fiber of the circuit that we're following. If you want to see this at map level, you can certainly click that and open that up at map level. So I can see, okay, well, that what is the path at map level? What does that look like? And that's what it looks like. So if we go back here, this answers all the questions about a specific circuit path, what's involved, how it's being used, etc. And then from there, you can use the system to help determine paths for you. So as you consume the strands of your infrastructure. If you're keeping track of all those things, then I can run a tool. I can go up and use what's called the ACRA, and it allows me to click and it'll show me paths that are available where you have strands available, and then I can create a pathway between those points. So anyway, so a lot of feature function out of the software. Certainly some things you don't have to use, but if you do want to track fiber cables and strands, we're purpose built for all those things, inside plant, outside plant, as far as network documentation goes. So we license based on objects. An object for us are things like the chassis, primarily, that I was showing you, things that build hierarchy, like the buildings and the manholes. But the chassis would be like this guy here. So subcomponents, the cards, the ports, that are inside there, we do not license for. That's not part of our license model. It's really mainly the chassis and the things that build hierarchy. And the links also are not part of the licensing, so that's not part of the licensing scheme either. The other side of that is a number of users. So I'm going to turn this back to Fred. He can just talk about pricing briefly, because that's always an interesting question. Pricing. So I'll let him take over, him or Aiden, and they can just show you quickly what we sort of pricing starts at. And then if you guys have questions, you can always reach back out. We can do a fuller presentation, demo, talk about your specific project, make recommendations, and go from there. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. All right. I will share my screen. I think there was a question. I just missed it. Maybe you
Yeah,
can take
it
a look
was
at that,
about,
Jason.
yeah, I got it. It was KML, KMZ question. Yes, you can import that. Thank you for asking that. A lot of folks come over from Google Earth. Google Earth is a great program, but when you want to get into the details of strands and devices and connections, it starts to get a little hard to do those things. So you can take your KML, KMZ out of Google Earth and import that in and use that as sort of your beginning point inside netTerrain. We do a pretty good job of importing that. And then
I'll
you
show
just
that
sort of
here.
convert things. So,
Right
yep.
here. You can import your KMZ KML here. If you
Yeah.
guys use Azure ArcGIS, you can also import that as well. You need to download this client that'll allow you to import your existing ArcGIS Azure diagrams into netTerrain. We currently have one export feature, which is export to KMZ KML. You can also import spreadsheets. So yeah, there are different ways to import data into netTerrain. If you have like a CMDB that has all your assets and circuits, all your assets, we can also connect to your ServiceNow or Remedy through REST API connectors. So, so we price that train by number of objects. So as Jason mentioned, those would be really these items. Let me double click here. So those would be your buildings. So these building objects would be your manholes, your vaults, poles, and your splice enclosures and patch panels are really what counts. So you need to add all those up. What's inside them, the LC cards, the ports, the connections, strands, they do not count. So I go back up here. So it'll be just the splice case here, not what's inside of it. So we start off at 1,000 objects. If you have more than 1,000 objects, we do them 500 object increments, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000. If you have more than 100,000, it's unlimited. So, and the other part is the number of users. These would be users that can make edits and changes to the diagrams. By default, it comes with 2 users. If you need more than 2 users, we sell them in 5, 10, 20, and unlimited users. So our base price for 1,000 objects, 2 users is a little bit over $6,000 a year. So 6,444. That includes 6 hours of training class, So instructor-led, 2 3-hour classes. It includes the software maintenance. Software maintenance includes new versions of NetTerrain. We go through 2, sometimes 3 version releases a year. It also includes customer support. And lastly, we have our upcoming GN User Summit, October 12th to the 14th in Las Vegas. For new customers, we will waive the registration fees. So you can have up to 2 people attend. We have 2 full days of NetTrain certification classes. That's going to be very beneficial, especially for new customers learning and using NetTerrain. So yeah, so deployments, we offer both on-premise. You will need to install NetTrain on your local Windows server with IIS .NET Framework. Also needs a Microsoft SQL Server license, or SQL Server Express. And the other option is our NetTrain Cloud. So that price is a little higher. So instead of 6,404 as the base price, the base price starts at 7,389. Again, these are yearly subscriptions. We do offer 3-year and 5-year subscriptions as well, which are discounted. So, any questions in regards to the pricing? All right. And look at that. We came to the end of the half hour. So I do want to thank you for your time. Again, if you want to test drive NetTrain, if you want to talk more specifics about your project requirements, if you like for us to design a very high level proof of concept, uh, we can do that as well. So feel free to reach out. Again, Aiden will be reaching out to everyone here in attendance. And again, thank you so much for your time, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye bye.
Appreciate it. All right, take care.